to work well in an organization, you should know the people you're working with. You really have to invest that time. That is extremely important. As a leader, you have to understand that you have to meet the organizational objectives, but now you have far more challenges from the people that you're leading with, because they have certain priorities which are not uniform across all of them. Someone who is teaching has got the job not because of his or her teaching ability. He has got that job because his or her research ability to be able to publish. That is the criterion most B school. Teaching is an art, and I have seen enough number of teachers now to say that your pedigree is important but not the only factor.
These days you have a lot of courses and certifications that can prove you. Do you think MBA is as relevant?
We have Dr. Ray, who is the director of Jaipuria Institute of Management. So please give him a huge round of applause. Okay, so I have a small introduction because this panelist has to be introduced because he has done quite a lot of things in his career. He has an extensive background in higher education management. His expertise spans institution building, strategic leadership, team development, and advanced statistics. As a graduate of IIM Ahmedabad and the Indian Statistical Institute, he has held leadership roles at IMT Business School, NMIMS, and XIMB, and also has served as an assistant general manager at the Reserve Bank of India. So, sir, I'm looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Perfect. Okay, sir, let's start with the PhD journey. You did your PhD from IIMA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, can you talk about that? Why do you choose to do a PhD, and how it is like to do a PhD from the top IIM?
So generally about a PhD, particularly in a social science area, the best thing that you can do is, what you get out of a PhD essentially is your ability to think improves significantly. You become a far better thinker than you were earlier. Okay, so even if you start at level this, post PhD will reach level. So that allows you to navigate new situations, understand issues that you've not seen before, unprecedented situations. So that's the benefit of doing PhD. Of course, you acquire academic knowledge. So you become super specialized in some area. Your writing improves. So you are able to critically write stuff which would be extremely strong for others to refute. That means your ability to build logic for things that you want to say or write becomes extremely powerful. So those are the gains that you get. Now the journey at IIM Ahmedabad is very interesting and fun-filled. I think we were a batch of 12 students. I joined in 2000. That was about 7 years after I worked for Reserve Bank of India in Mumbai. So in our batch of 12 students, eventually 10 came out. 2 of them dropped midway. So what happens in a PhD program, I think it's true for all IIMs. The first 2 years, you just work like a PGP student. You do the regular MBA program, do all the courses, except in the second year, you do some research-oriented courses in your specific area. Once you've done that, then the journey starts where you are left on your own. So PhD program is, in a way, somewhat unstructured. So there's no guided schedule. There's no people around you. Oh, you have to be here at this time and be there that time, take a test tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. So it's a lot of responsibility suddenly is thrust upon you. And then you have to map your next 2.5 years, how you want to deal with it. There's a learning part of it, but quite a challenging part of it, because you can drift. You start very ambitious, be very ambitious, set a broad goal, and then eventually you say, okay, no, this is not doable. I have finite time. I have to get a job. So all those things play into it. But overall, it's a great journey. It requires a lot of commitment and patience, some sacrifice in the sense that you won't be earning much. You'll get a good stipend at an IIM, no doubt about that. But still, yeah. So you postpone your career by a few years only to leverage substantially later.
We'll double click on that later as well.
Yeah.
because that is the angle that I'm very interested to discuss also. Because PhD is not discussed lately, so I just wanted to understand from somebody who has done it,
Yeah.
how do you
Okay.
leverage it later, and what role
Correct,
does it
correct.
play, and how is it
Yeah.
beneficial? But before that, sir, from Reserve Bank of India, you have done some leadership role, and now coming to an education institute. What are some learnings you carry forward from that space to here what you're building at Jaipuria?
Across all organizations, few things are very clear. You have to make decisions. You have to lead team. You will have people in your team who think differently, will have different priorities. Not everybody will go along with you all the time. So these are the common traits in any organization. Okay, unless the culture is so tight that everybody, but that's practically impossible. It's a Six Sigma task that cannot be achieved easily. In a very short period of time, it may be achieved, but generally you cannot achieve it. So the thing that when you move from one organization to the other organization, you begin to start carrying a lot of empathy with you. If you've worked enough, and especially if you've led a team, and I had a team of 20 people at that time when I left at RBI. It's a pretty large team. So you begin to understand your members. So the first lesson that you learn is that to work well in an organization, you should know the people you're working with. You really have to invest that time. That is extremely important. We get so focused on the goal, we forget the people. And once you forget the people, then you don't know how are you going to take the next steps, how you're going to achieve the goals that you set out for yourself. So you have to know how to work with your team, and that's the lesson I think everyone carries one moves from the others. Of course, Reserve Bank is like a government organization. Okay, so it's far more rule and process driven. In an academic world, it's for free. So I was stepping into a world which was freer from a less free world. So it was easier. The opposite is not. So if you're a professor and tomorrow I go into a bank, tomorrow I go into the Reserve Bank, it will be far more difficult for me to adjust, because I am in a far more freer world. I have control over my time. But in a organization that runs on very strict rules and policies and process with clearly guided outcomes, your control over your time is little less limited in that sense. So the learnings are typically team management, knowing your team, knowing how to take decision, prioritizing. How do you prioritize issues when tricky issues come? So these are common learnings as you move from one. And of course, my role, a significant part of my role was to do a lot of data churning. I had a lot of data work. I used to do capital formation forecasting for the country. Okay, so we used to get the balance sheets, and I'm talking about 1995 when I joined RBI. So at that point of time, you had a lot of. It was not you can just click and download a CSV file with a lot of data. Things were not like that. You would have balance sheets coming in. Those data would have to be entered. It would take a lot of time, and then you run some old machines and run some programs and do. So I had a lot of data experience, a lot of data churning experience, which of course helped me in an academic setting because, yeah.
Speaking of experience, you also have experience working at IMT Dubai, right?
Yes.
That gives you an international exposure when it comes to working. And now you're working in an Indian institute. So I'm sure people will be interested to know how is it culturally different, like global MBA versus Indian MBA?
All right. So Dubai, in that sense, is not that far away as one may think in terms of culturally. If you look at UAE as a country, only 10% are local Emirati population. Rest of us are expats, out of which 60-70% are Indians. So at IMT Business School, we had two sets of students. One set of student would be the local Emirati population, and there would be the expats who would come from either IMT Ghaziabad, do a 1 year there, or the local Indians who would stay there and their children studying there. An MBA program across the world, if you just go through the course and the outline and the structure, apart from a few courses which would be very specific, very local to that country, could be a cross-cultural course, could be a course where in Dubai you may focus more on the automotive side in offering electives. In India you may focus something else. But generally a business program will not be very different. It will be very, very similar. What will change is the people who are delivering it. Okay, so in UAE, in my case, I had faculty from 8 or 9 countries. A lot of them Middle Eastern, Lebanese, had one Egyptian, one Turkish, one Britisher, and rest were Indians and one or two more from other countries. I can't recall exactly. So when you work with these kinds of people, your organization functions very differently. So someone has to certainly do a namaz 5 times a day, and he has to. So you have to adjust your schedules. Someone has to take leave on Christmas on so many days, so you have to adjust accordingly. So the cultural aspects come in there, and there you need to show some empathy and understanding. As a leader, you have to understand that you have to meet the organizational objectives, but now you have far more challenges from the people that you're leading with, because they have certain priorities which are not uniform across all of them. That is the one thing. The other challenge that comes is that because they have educated in different countries, so someone who has come from a Turkish PhD or a Ireland, one faculty was from Ireland, so he has done his PhD in an Ireland school. So his mental makeup and the way he studied a business degree is very different from someone who studied at IMA for me. So we've learned business differently, they have learned business differently. So we need to understand that one of the most important thing therefore is to do regular faculty development. You want to bring them all together, do a lot more understanding of how the pedagogy will involve, so that the students actually start learning and they don't get confused from one style to the other to the style. Too much variation is not good. Little bit of variation is certainly welcome, but too much is not good. So we need to bring them to a certain level of understanding across. Yeah.
You studied at IIMA, so
Yeah.
again, that's one of the top IIMs in the country.
Yeah.
So I want to know from you, since you have you have given extensive amount of time there, dedicated extensive
Yeah.
amount of time there, and now you are dedicating your time building an institute. I hear initially we had some questions about companies only hiring for specific roles from top IIMs only. In terms of academic rigor and the quality of teaching, do we see a lot of similarities, or is it genuinely stark difference?
Obviously, if you are at an IMA, your access to top companies is better, without doubt. But if you ask me the other question, is the teaching different? It is not. You may get a excellent teacher in a very ordinary B school, and you may get a very average teacher in a top B school. Why is that possible? It is possible because someone who is teaching has got the job not because of his or her teaching ability. He has got that job because his or her research ability to be able to publish. That is the criteria in most B schools. Okay, so you select, at least the IIMs will that. You need a long chain of publications, good publications. Now you may have 20 great publications, but as a teacher you may not be great. So there was one study, I cannot quote the source, so don't blame me on this. So there was one study, I think it was in 2009-10, when some students across all IIMs were asked a simple question as to how many subjects or how many faculty course would you like to attend again? Who really inspired you? So the answer to that question came to about 8 or 9%. That means out of 100 teachers, there are about 8 or 9 faculty whose course you would like to attend again. So that's the reality. That's the reality. It not necessarily means that school A will always have all the best teachers and school B will always have best. It's never like that. There'll always be a mix. Probability. I'm a statistician by training, so probabilistically I would say you will certainly have a higher percentage of good teachers at IMA than at any other school. That is for sure. But teaching is an art, and I have seen enough number of teachers now to say that your pedigree is important but not the only factor. Where you come from, where you've done your studies, from a knowledge point of view is extremely important, but how you transmit that knowledge point of view, from how you transmit that knowledge does not necessarily depend on your pedigree. It depends on a whole lot of other things, how you've kept yours updated, how you've had your business conversations, how you engage with the students. Are you a performer in the class? That's what it is. Business teaching is also a bit of performance, because when you do, for example, you do a case analysis. Now, a case analysis does not require lot of knowledge, but it requires enough knowledge but great articulation. It requires great timing. It requires exact knowledge of when to ask a question, when to ask an open-ended question, and when to digress, take the flow to something else. These are pieces of art, and anyone can acquire that. Anyone can acquire that. So yes, so the general answer is obviously, and if you get to an IIM, you'll have a best, probably the better set of teachers. But doesn't mean that another B school will not have that. They are equally or similar number of good teachers everywhere. Yeah. So there's no guarantee of either.
Love your answer because that puts so many things in perspective, and I'm sure they have a lot to ask you.
Yeah.
Before opening the floor for round one Q&A, I wanted to ask you one more question. So now, sir, based on the experience that you have, how do you look at education? And you spoke about performance element also in that, like you need to have that element of knowing exactly when to do what. Obviously tied with the curriculum and the learning pedagogy. How do you look at Indian curriculum now?
Curriculum per se is not a problem at all. You can sit and get an MIT curriculum, download it, create a course outline and say we are cutting edge. That is as simple as that, right? So curriculum is not a problem. Who is delivering it? The challenge is who is inside the classroom. I can create the best possible outline on an analytics, data science, business analytics, but how am I teaching it? What are the assignments I'm giving? What kind of data sources, practical examples I'm bringing to your class? Those are the real things. So the curriculum, you will not find it very different. Unless the school is really lazy, they have not looked at the outline ever, they have not changed the books, they are teaching 2003, 5-year-old books or maybe 20-year-old books. If that is the case, curriculum is outdated. But I'll tell you, most business school, what they name today, are taking it very seriously. Their curriculums do get updated. But the real challenge is who is inside the classroom.
Okay, we'll open the floor for round one Q&A.
My question is on the relevance of MBA, like just out there. I mean, it's not so hard to like learn on the job and keep on upskilling yourself. These days you have a lot of courses and certifications that can prove you to, like that can still be like adding on to your resume, which is why people generally end up doing a master's course. So what do you think on that? Do you think MBA is as relevant, or someone who is already at a good job could stay over there, continue, learn on the job and go ahead in the journey instead of pivoting and actually going, and you're again putting out 2 years of your life in studies?
So is that a trick question to the director of a B school? No, but that's a relevant question, and I can tell you when I had joined IIMA, there were parents who were to ask the same question. That question has been asked for decades. Now you have to understand what is this business whole about. Now there are many ways of taking a journey of learning. There is a way where you self-taught way, where you are working slowly, you're picking up skills. But is there a more efficient way? Is there a more structured way? Is there a more comprehensive way? So there are multiple ways to learn and go on one path. Is it possible that you are in a certain job and you are progressing in some way and learning, picking up skills, probably tech skills or whatever skills, that's the fashion today. But are you missing out on something? Did you get a chance to explore every other avenue? Maybe you are great at coding and so you're enjoying your data analytics work, but actually when you go to a B school, you suddenly realize you love brands, you love marketing. So that's exploration. That opportunity you have to allow yourself. And you have to also see, if you do a business program, it takes you at a few stages higher in the corporate level. So you start at a slightly different level than pure fresher. Also, as I told you, one of the best things about an MBA is that you network. You will network automatically. These guys, your friends or your seniors or your alums, they would be placed, and you'll have that connection, and that's a very important connection to have. It's not just about professional growth, but even for personal help. So I know of an example when, during COVID time, someone was not getting a hospital bed, but he reached out to an alum, Max, he knows the CEO, and somehow it was arranged. So, the network is not just for a professional support, it's also for personal growth. It is not wrong to say that you cannot learn on your own and go, but can you do it fast? Is there a FOMO there? Because suddenly you say, oh, my HR went to this campus and got these guys up there with MBA tags. That still is important. So am I now, how do I catch up to those guys? So those issues are there. And the most important point is your own personal exploration. Because in this long life, 2 years is nothing, because you need to really discover what are you really good at and what do you want to make out of your life. So don't think of a job at the end of your 2-year MBA as your ROI. Your ROI is the rest of the life that you're going to lead. And because you have now mastered a certain way of speaking, okay, because once you do an MBA, you'll also master the art of speaking, which will essentially allow you to use a lot of interesting jargon in amongst people who don't know those jargons, okay. So you will stand out automatically, and that will leverage continue, and you can then build on faster. So it's about efficiency of your learning. It's about the opportunity to allow yourself to discover. So all that opportunity is presented in a B school if you make the most of it. And it's not really 2 years. It's, if you really count out summers and all, it's 16 months really. It just flies. Time flies.
That's a great answer. And another question that I kind of ask everyone is, when I'm thinking of a career, should I think of it in a more generalist or a specialist perspective? So that is one question. Or you could even look at it as, this is one part of the question. Another part of the question is like industry versus a job function. What should you choose?
Generalist specialist is I think not the issue at the level at an MBA. You can say I specialized in marketing, but that's about it. But when you get in an organization, you could be a business development person, you could be a sales person, you could be, so the curriculum gives you a specialization, but it's not like a medical science that you are super specialized or that kind of specialization. You have to understand that industry by its nature is very cross-functional entity. You might be a on the field salesperson, but you need to understand supply chain. Without knowing supply chain and inventory management, you would be 70% equipped to carry on that job. So really this mindset is slowly is going to be erased the moment you start working anywhere. You will see that I need to know this and I need to know that as well. What is important is that role. I would always give importance to that role where there's an opportunity to grow and learn more. You obviously you can't guess who are you going to work with. You only realize it when you get into the organization. Leaving that aside, I think the most important thing is to know the role. What is it that your day will look like? And that's very important to know. Of course, if an industry is dying, you don't pick up a great role in that dying industry. So don't make those cardinal mistakes. But other than that, I think it's the role that is far more important than the industry. Because you need to shine and you need to grow and you need to really reach your full potential. That will only happen if you start enjoying. So you would be, I would say, MBA curriculum, we say it is mile wide and inch deep. That means what? It is generalist, largely generalist, somewhat specialist. That is what it is. And that's exactly what happens everywhere. Unless, let's say, you have joined an investment bank and you are a buy side person. You already you really understand that this is the only thing I want to do and pays very well, and so that's like a specialized. But those are limited. Those are limited. Ultimately, a majority of you would actually do jobs which will require a cross-functional understanding of that job and also cross-functional knowledge. So don't make that decision early. I mean, it's not needed. I think it's not needed. If you really love a certain industry, you would not want to get out of that industry. It is possible, right? It is quite possible. I mean, it's you have to really check yourself against the love you have for that industry. I mean, if it's like, okay, I can do FMCG or retail, or both are okay, but this is my priority, then you will make that switch. But I don't want to get out of this. Then it's a very personal call, really, but not to be taken at a very young age, I suppose.
Good evening, sir. So, since you have a lot of experience in research and academia, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the Indian research landscape, because coming from a technical background, I have a lot of frustration with the Indian research background, where I think except for the top 2-3% researchers or professors, 98% people or researchers, professors, I think are forced by the universities or colleges to just, pump out papers where there is no innovation. There's just aiming for numbers, just churning out numbers. There's no real groundbreaking things happening. So that just creates a culture where we are not chasing learning or innovation. So how does one change that? What is happening according to you?
So first of all, are you guys set out to ensure that I lose my job? Like, the second question has come like that. Conspiracy theory is what? Anyway, you're right. I'm amazed. It's a very mature question, and I don't know. Do you have a research background or you have some experience
I have
working?
some experience with research.
Okay. So I cannot dispute what you said. Why do you think this is happening? Because research needs a long-term focus. Research needs investment. No university or the vice chancellor or even persons like me, we don't look beyond a quarter, we don't look beyond a year, we look at an NIRF ranking. That's the way we are made as a country. Everywhere, we are not just academics, everywhere we look at the next quarter. In research, you have to be willing to be failing occasionally. You have to be extremely patient. I should not pull up my faculty for the next 3 years if he has not published, he or she has not published for a year. That's extremely important. If I pull up my faculty, you've not done any work last year, I'm really working on this, something will come out. But if I put pressure, you next quarter you deliver, your KRA says 2 papers in cumulative 2 years on an average, it'll go down, okay, I'll put something. That's what is happening, unfortunately.
But what do you think is the cultural difference between, let's say, West or even China has taken quite a leap in terms of the quality of research that they're publishing. So what is the cultural difference that...
See, I haven't worked anywhere as in China or US, these get places where they publish a lot. But I think there's a lot of investment they make. Investment in time and investment in people and resources. Anything that you want is available. If you go to universities, at least in India, and go to a lab, you will be amazed that nothing is there. You need good equipment to do good work, right? Equipment, it's fundamentally investment, fundamentally a long-term view, being patient. I'm sure there are few institutes which are doing it. And for a long period of time in India, if you see the education sector, research was relegated to Indian Council of, not part of the university. We were largely a teaching world, a teaching country. We were teaching. Maybe 2005-6 we started speaking more about research because the world started changing maybe. So that's also there. So we have to take some more time to catch up, and so there is this thing will happen. It will take time. So we are also transiting from a teaching oriented country to a research oriented one.
Hi sir, good afternoon.
Yeah.
So it was like I wanted to ask that MBA was a fancy word from long time.
Mediocre but arrogant. Yeah, if that is what you mean. Yeah.
So like I wanted to understand that everyone will be falling behind that MBA and IIM. That why you choose the PhD in IIM, IMA, that too. So
because I realized corporate life is not for me. I understood very early. When I was in Reserve Bank, I used to go to Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research in Goregaon, Mumbai, this place where I could go and take some occasional sessions on statistics because I studied masters from ISI and also. I started enjoying teaching. Then I knew I need to make a career there. So I was 33 when I joined PhD program, adult education, So that is when it was quite late, but that was 7 years or 8 years in RBI. So that's when I realized this is what I want to do. I want to be inside the class. I want to teach. So that is why I did this PhD. You cannot be a professor without a PhD in our country still. Today things have changed a little bit, but that time. Yeah. So that's primarily that. Because I made up a mind that I want to join academics, and so that's the basic requirement.
So another question.
Yeah.
That like IMA will give a pedigree to get into any market. Like even if you want to become an entrepreneur, you can get into job market. Yeah. It will be opening.
Yeah, you're right. 50% of my batch is in the corporate sector.
It will be opening doors for all the sessions.
Yeah.
But even other B schools struggling to place in job market. Just to in the job market, we are struggling to go to. But if you want to go into entrepreneurship, totally other ventures will be checking for where they are come from. So I was reading some ventures publishers that most of them venture back. It was like from any one founder will be from IIM or IIT. So what do you think of this?
it's a large country. Now, if I have to, if I'm see, I've never done this. Like, so I'm just trying to understand what might happen. So I've not given money. I've never been a VC. But suppose for a moment I consider myself as a VC and I'm here to evaluate 5 proposals that come to me. What is the first thing I will look at? I will look at the team. I will look at the idea even later. For me, the team is more important. Are they cohesive? Are they bright? Do they really understand what they do? Do they love what they are trying to do? Or is that they're in it for a quick buck? These are the things I'll understand. Now, if you ask some of the VCs, I know for sure in UAE I did talk to one. And the amount of proposals they have, every day they receive, fills up your Excel sheet in no time. Now, how will they shortlist? This is a demand supply challenge again. So many proposals. They have to find some criteria or way of filtering so that they can meet a limit. Everybody's got limited time. So these might be the reasons that are driving this. But ultimately, I need to know this person. And if I know this is a great pedigree, maybe there's something more to that. You know, so that could be a reason, because you have to be very sure where you're putting your money, and you are looking at signals that give you that assurance. Okay, and trust me, going to a good institute also gives you exposure. So you bring in a lot more, I would say, perspective to anything that you do, and that is also valued. So these could be the reasons.
Awesome. Thank you for the great questions, guys. Sir, I have one last question before we call Vikram on stage. So the question is, what is your long-term vision with Jaipuria, and how are you planning to materialize it? What are some steps that you're actively taking?
Yeah, so our foremost, I would say the number one long-term is that to get a AACSB accreditation. We have 340 plus business schools in India which are NB accredited. We have 3,000 business schools, that's another matter, but I'm saying the NB accredited number is about 330 odd, 330 to 350. So if you have to stand out in among that category, we have to get some sort of an accreditation. We are in pursuit of AACSB accreditation, and we've done the last leg. Maybe another month and a half is what we need to wait for some good news. That should give us a little bit of an international, space. We can foray into doing a lot of dual degrees with some of the business schools, 1 year in Jaipuria, 1 year abroad. We do already have one with Kedge Business School, but we have not opened it yet. But we do have an MOU like that. So some of those things we want to do so that it helps our brand. We get better students. So ultimately, the business school's future lies in the quality of the students. Okay, and the better the quality, better will be the business school. It's like a cycle that continues. So that's the one thing. Of course, we are growing. I think we've from 360 students we are moved to 480 this year. That means additional infrastructure, a lot more faculty. I think in my school we have 49 full-time faculty, which will become about 55 by July of 2025. So there is a lot of growth. Growth with quality is the biggest challenge for anyone in this world. So that's also a challenge for us. How do you manage the same quality with growth, right? So that's what we want to do, and the signal for that would be the AACSB accreditation. This is essentially a quality stamp, and I'm sure in a few months' time we'll be able to get there.
Sir, thank you for your time. It was great talking to you.
Yeah, thank you.